Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 3-for-1 Sky Fantasy podcast from Fantasy Football Pub. Hub. It should be a pub. We should be on the beer after the weekends we've all just had from a fantasy perspective. But anyway, Paul, how is your Sky weekend going so far?
I'm accepting of my mediocre score so far. What I'm not accepting of is Sky Sports Fantasy Football's misinterpretation of their own rules and inconsistencies. So it's like VAR decisions going to Sky Sports, whether they give something or whether they don't. So yeah, as those that listened to last week's pod know, I brought in Matoma, and he was credited for the assist on Saturday. Was still there on Sunday, and then overnight last night was removed for the reason is it's not an Opta stat, it's not an Opta assist, but at the same time, because it's an on goal, but at the same time they've credited Maddison last week against Crystal Palace's assist points, 3 points, and credited Mbuemo's at the weekend 3 points for assist. So it's just like do what you want when you want, like Wild West.
You're going to make a statement like Arsenal?
Yes, I'm going to do a video, a Mikel Arteta video. Maybe we'll do it on Nip and a Half podcast, and you can record me and we can upload it. Embarrassment. We need to support these people at Sky Sports Fantasy Football Towers. We need to support them.
What was that statement all about? It was a complete nothingness, wasn't it? We support Arteta's comments. Will work or off. I don't know. It seems to be at the moment.
So Fantasy Football Hub's going to have to come out, and Will's going to have to come out and support my comments.
Yes, absolutely. There seems to be a trend at the moment. Don't get me wrong. I know there's been some horrendous decisions, right? There does seem to be a trend at the moment that whenever a big team doesn't get the result they want, they have to publish a statement saying they're not happy with VAR. It's just like, just deal with it. Sorry. I know, like, the Luis Diaz one, I completely get. There was an actual error, not like an officiating error. There was an error in the implementation of VAR. I get that, but the other stuff, I just think just get on with it. Like, if you need to rely on VAR to win games and get to the position you want to be, then you just want to look maybe a bit more at how you're playing and stuff. Anyway, that's my little rant over. It's easy for me as a Spurs fan. We haven't had anything go against us yet. Watch this evening. I'll be like,
I'd say Wolves fans after numerous key decisions have went against them this season would be loving that statement.
You watch. I'll be publishing a statement on behalf of Spurs now later tonight when they get done over by a dodgy penalty or something. But anyway, on to Sky. I've actually had an okay week. Unlikely hero in my cut price keeper Johnston, 12-pointer. I only got him in just because he's the only one I could afford. So I say decent, not great by any stretch, maybe 30 odd points or something. But Son Romero and Palmer to play tonight. Oh, I had Bowen on the weekend, so I did have Bowen. Yeah. But yeah, 3 to play this evening too. So hoping for a green. Yeah, quite fortunate. I think there's a lot of hard luck stories on the weekend. Just having a quick look at the chat. Windy's in, Ian Kerwin, Dave Hannigan. Martin Darley says, "Evening, gents. Finally managed to join you live after 2 years. Great to have you with us, Martin." Colin Johnston is in. Johnny White, dismal week. 20 points so far on my first team. Paul Kendo, Jason Manners, Bert Welsh, Al England, John Acornley. Even all, how can I improve my rank? Tough one this week. Bobby Shearer says, The only better thing than the bad game week is everyone else having won too. And that's right, Bobby. That is definitely the way to think about it. Viney's in, Paul Kendo, and so many others. Thank you all so much for joining us. And there's a theme. We'll start off actually just on this, on this theme of looking at the week so far. So we've got the top 1K ownership. Paul, you just wanted to say a few words about this.
Yeah. So I'm less interested in the percentage stats of who's of those in the top 1K ownership, and more the generalization. So there's 20 players on here, and I've also looked at the 20 most owned overall players in the game. On this list that you've got shown just now, top 1K ownership, of the 20 players, only 2 players there scored more than 5 points this weekend.
More than 5? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And then on the overall chart, only 4 players scored over 5, and 10 scored 2 points or less.
Wow.
So whatever your score is, like when you take the averages on that basis, on an ownership basis, everyone's having a bad week. And therefore, I think if you didn't use a transfer this week, you're the winner, because no transfers used. Everyone has an average score. I know that, like, there's a few players, like the ones that had over 5. Like, you could have a double up. Like, you've got Johnson and Bowen, which both scored over 5 and done well out of. I know people will have the double up with Trippier and Pope, and I'll have done well. So there will be people that have done well, but those individuals will be in isolation rather than a large proportion of people having multiple players scoring well.
Yeah, really interesting. And and you're absolutely right. Around this, it's not a bad week to have a bad week, because everyone's having a bad week. Because you said that. I'm assuming the 2 players, Bowen and Trippier, was it, scored over 5 maybe in that list.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Other than that, it looks like most people looking.
I thought Pope might have been on the list, but he's obviously lower owned than
lower-owned, yeah.
Douglas Luiz. He's on the overall list, but
looking, in the chat, Ian's got 21. We'll touch on Ian's question now. Paul Kendo 31, Sam 22, Glenn 35. Show off. He said, although I'd say that's my B team now, so it's probably not got most of those added in. How many have you got, Paul, this week so far of interest?
Are we including or excluding the Thomas points that I'm protesting to get added?
Excluding, because they're not going to get added back on.
They'll do well. 21.
21, so you're toying with Ian. Aaron's on 19. If there's anyone lower than Aaron, put it in. I'm on a measly 38, but and just a 3 to play this evening. So nice to get one over on you, Paul, for 1 week. Even if it is 1 week only.
Sarcasm, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Ian's question was, do you ever recall scoring less than 21 points from 9 plays? Bear in mind, there's 2 captains in there as well. Incredible. He said, and maybe a related point for 2 experienced Sky players to discuss. How difficult is it to remain calm and stick to the plan? We have terrible game weeks with huge rank drops.
So in the first one, I can't remember a week that bad. But then again, like, based on the stats that I've just mentioned, I don't have a great game week score. I've got the same as Ian, 21, and I'm okay with it, knowing that there's only going to be few people that have made massive gains. And again, I've not used a transfer, so I'm pretty comfortable on that front. And I've got no issues in my team. Like, I've got Son, who I like to cover for captaincy. I sorted that a while back. I've got Nakamba, and could I move him on to Palmer? Possibly. I know that's questionable. We'll discuss in a bit. So I can't remember this low score in a game week, but I personally am overly concerned about it. The second point's interesting. What even if you do have a bad game week, I think I've touched on this before, but I mute WhatsApp chats. Like, I think like a gambler's mentality, that someone always posts their wins, very seldom posts their losses, right? And it's just there's even an element of unbiasedness in it. So when people do score checks in WhatsApp chats, I tend not to do any, even if it's high or low now. But I probably did post my scores when I had a good week when I was asked about it, and probably didn't post my low scores when I had a bad week in it. And I'm not saying everyone's like this. I appreciate people be consistent, particularly content creators that have a consistency in the way that they would put out their scores, and they often put their information and their teams out prior to it rather than post it anyway, and therefore there's nowhere to hide. But I do think that there's a consciousness that when you go into those groups and you see all the high scores, that'll be concentrated on the people that will have had a good game week, more so than even if the averages of that distribution of people as well. So that's the one main thing that I would do, is like just to cancel out the noise, and then just refocus. I'm always like very much have a loose plan, stick to my loose plan, take the information that's happened at the weekend. Does that change the plan slightly? For me, not really. I still don't see that there's any standout players that I don't have access to. Was I jealous when people got brought in? Tsimikas last week and got an 11-pointer? Yes. but I didn't react to it, and look what happened. He got dropped. He got dropped this weekend. There's so many players as well that, like fullbacks in the Sky game and mid-priced midfielders, that generally do very, very average, like below average, and then I'll hit one or two hauls in a row and become essential or whatever deemed through that as well. And I just try and cancel that out as well, and think long term. Fullbacks I don't think do well in Sky in particular, and like Matty Cash is, I know a lot of people brought him in after a couple of hauls, and now he's struggling again. So yeah, for me, just I try and mute the noise. I am addictive that I've got like a red tick or a red notification. I try and do stuff, so I'm turning the phone off or not looking at that page or putting it in a folder somewhere. Maybe is maybe it's something else to do. But yeah, that like is honestly how I operate. If I've had a bad week, I don't look in WhatsApp chats on purpose, because and it's not people gloating necessarily.
No,
and
it's not
people,
it's just chatting. Isn't
yeah.
it?
But yeah, as I say, I would have done it unconsciously before, probably. How was your? What was the scores from the game week? If I had a good game week, I'd post it. If I didn't, then I probably wouldn't. It's
And nowadays, if you have a good game week, you post it to me with a kiss emoji.
No, what usually happens is you try and wind me up about something, and then I was like, "Have you looked at my team? You know I've scored this, right?"
I'll be like, "I scored 85 this week." You'll be like, "You send me your team scored 95 with a kiss." I'm like, yeah, just a couple of things to add, I suppose, as well. I think it's all context as well, right? So 21 points. Let's just say which what we're talking about there. There are players on 31 or 35 who've had a green arrow, right? And if we look back, I just looked back 2 game weeks when I scored 127 points, but there were people who scored 140 points. Now, I don't particularly think I've had a really bad game week scoring 127 points, and that's a 13 points difference. So everyone has had an uber low week, and I know it's the percentage increase in terms of thing, right? So if I had scored 127 and people are scoring 200, I'd have had a bad game week, but it was only 13, 15 points. But this week's the same. It's still only 13, 15 points over the season. There's no prizes for weekly percentage increases. So another goal, another clean sheet somewhere on the line is going to cancel out this whole sort of miserable week. So I just wouldn't worry about it. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I also think it's a bit of an opportunity potentially, because I do think there will be some more inexperienced players who will now panic and who will make potentially transfers like this evening to try and force something, to try and claw something back when it's not necessarily the right time to do it. So I do think in terms of stick to the plan, absolutely stick to the plan. One, it's not that bad. Fit 10, 12, 15 more points, you've got to rank right. That's as we all know in this game, that is nothing like over the season. And inexperienced players will try and chase now. We've had injury, potentially like loads of injury rumors this weekend, like Haaland, who looks like he's going to be okay now. Cash potentially, Simicast, he's not injured. He was dropped. Burn, for those who haven't seen, it's just been ruled out for 2 months. I bet he was in a few teams, which will also affect the whole Newcastle defense, I'm guessing, as well. Botman, is continues to kind of be out still. So I think in terms of and you only get this through experience, don't you? As we kind of all know probably in this chat, not panicking, not forcing things now is the best way to play, and just sit tight. Next week or the week after, things will look very different. Team looks in good shape, got good structure, things will look rosy again, and all of a sudden people have used 2, 3, 4 transfers for not, for hardly any gains, if any gains. And sometimes when you're forcing transfers, you make negative gains, which we've both seen in the past, well, haven't we? So just put a bit to add on there. Don't worry about it. The game is not lost in November. It's how you play as a whole throughout the season, which does not include rage transfers and trying to force things when you don't have to, especially if your team's in good shape.
Yeah, even like transfers used yesterday, like bringing in Van Dijk or Nunes, which I'm not critiquing either of those moves to bring them in, because you might have been taking out a player that's underperforming or whatever. but they both picked up 5 points, and then 5 points is what, just under 25% of my total points. So even like 5 points is going to make such a difference. But then that's a transfer used this week. Again, that's not critiquing those that have made the move, but just if you're playing the fact that you've not made any transfers and then comparing scores against others as well.
Yeah, no, I could. Yeah, I completely agree. Just to move on, Glenn Murray's got 35 and says, "Must have upset Fergie. Not mentioned my name for over a month now. I'm so sorry, Glenn. That's not on purpose. Though. I only tend to read the first sort of 10 or 20 names because otherwise I'll just bore everyone to tears." But he says, "Okay, admit Spurs are a possession-based team now. If that's what it was months ago, no, it wasn't, Glenn. But great to have you with us." Just saw a comment. Paul Kendo, this is the new Satan Greavesy. I like that as well. And Graham Craig scored 45 points. Martin Beasley scored 18. Looks like Martin, you may have won the award so far, but obviously there is a game to go. But don't worry, as I say. Glenn's got 35 with a hands up. Ian's panicking on 18. What's that? 17 points. 17 points is nothing, right? Absolutely nothing. Few players to talk about. Surprised on the weekend potentially, though we did see it again with Man City. We sometimes see, don't we, big players rested or dropped or rotated when they have got these easy games. Ruben Dias and Gvardiol, I believe, didn't play for City on the weekend. Simicast didn't play against Luton. In terms of Simicast, just obviously because he is much more highly owned.
This feels like one of those ones. This feels like one of those ones where you're forcing a move out because you brought Simicast in at 7.2 million and he's still likely to play the majority of the games. I believe the only reason, he's not been playing particularly well, but he scored 11 points in Sky Fantasy Football last week. But it looks like the reason was probably to deal with some aerial threat of Luton, knowing Joe Gomez's size. So that feels like one of those ones. I can't imagine anyone's owned Simicast for more than 3 weeks, and it feels like you'd just be forcing a move from him rather than I would just hold him now. I don't think there'd be any reason to take him out. Yeah,
and and obviously after next weekend is international break as well, and they first came back and they play Man City away. Then the following week they play on the Sunday at Fulham, but one game, right? We've all done
7.2 million.
Exactly. It's what you expect, don't it? You can't be expecting 9-10 million returns for that. So Cash looks like he's had a knock. He has been brought off early a few times as well, and Villa just aren't keeping clean sheets either, are they? Which I know he's been getting some bonus and things, but we had some questions as well around Cash as well as Simicast. What's your thoughts on him?
I don't think he justifies the fact that people were thinking he's a good Sky asset. For me, it was a small data set of getting high XGI for, and he obviously got that the outputs in a few of those games as well. So if you owned them in that period of time, fair play to you. It's just not my style because they're just far too inconsistent. Even I know there's been a few questions about Pau Torres. I would rather hold Pau Torres knowing that Villa get a lot of passing stats and their run's still okay. I would rather hold him, but with Cash, I'm not as keen on him as a Sky Fantasy Football asset, and I try and avoid all fullbacks. Maybe Simicast, I don't have him. Maybe he'd have been a tempter at just based on his price alone, and knowing that then I'd have the overhaul to fix it and take him out when Robertson was due back, and maybe Trippier, players that play for big teams that have the ability to pick up passing bonus, like Trippier and Trent. I appreciate that they're anomalies to this, but in general, I try and avoid fullbacks, and even if he was or wasn't injured, I wouldn't think it's the worst thing to kind of consider what your options are.
And the third one is not so marvelous Nakamba, who keeps he keeps dividing opinion. He's essential. He's rubbish. Yeah. He's essential. He's rubbish. The difference.
And my stance is he's all right.
Yeah, exactly. He's 6.6 million. What to expect? He is on 4 yellows, which is a bit of which is one factor we haven't seen before. Thoughts on the Camber? You got to leave him till he gets his 5th booking as a minimum.
I am marginally tempted to move him on to Cole Palmer today, but then again, I could make that exact move in 4 weeks' time, of which there's only 3 games in that period of time, and if he did manage to avoid getting booked even up until the last game, then I'd have the same fixture gain, and things might have changed by that point in time. I might have more budget and be able to upgrade him rather than like the sideways move to Palmer. So I don't hate the move to Palmer. I wouldn't do it if I was lower on transfers for sure. If I was on kind of like 35 or less, I probably would avoid doing it. But at the same time, if I don't hate the move either, I think.
Very fancy. You got splinters in your ass after
so,
that. Mate.
Well, and that's why I put that, and that's why I put in. If I had more than 25 transfers, I'd probably make the move, and if I had 25 or less, then I don't. So
25,
35. Sorry.
Cool. Flipping egg. Let's get that clear. 35, not 25. There you go. There's your answer, everyone. You've got more than 35. Make the move, or potentially make the move if you want to. If you've got less, don't do it. Makes absolute sense. And then a couple of players, people are maybe interested in bringing in. Huang Li Chan has been doing really, really well. For Wolves, they have the single game day in a couple of weeks as well. I can't really get excited personally. They've got a half decent run. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, does it? I can't get excited. I can't get excited by it, and he moved position to cover Neto rather than him playing through the middle at the weekend. So until Neto comes back, just doesn't stand out to me. That Fulham Wolves game, if going there, for me, is one of the goalkeepers.
Yeah. It feels like it's like kind of when we were looking at other play. We've all been guilty. We've been guilty of it this season, right? Where we just pick crap players. Well, sorry, not crap players. That's unfair. Pick players from poor teams just because they've got a captain day. If you didn't have a captaincy day, we wouldn't even be looking at him, I don't think. Bobby says ticking over nicely. He is, but when you look at the other players, like look at my midfield at the moment, for example, I don't know who I would take out of Saka, Salah, Son, Bowen, and Palmer as my midfield at the moment. I just think there's better options for better teams, I suppose, and there's lots of mids I haven't got who I wish I had as well. So Evie low down for me, Evie like 9th or 10th choice, if that, to be honest. I think for me, it's just that captaincy day is swaying things a little bit, but I feel I would, if I forced him into my team, say for Bowen, I feel I'd be missing out on Bowen's points, even if he scores in the captaincy day, I still feel I'd be missing out. So. Yeah, I just can't get excited. And
maybe one if you get an injury, like in your midfield, and then he's at a nice price point to move to. That frees up money to do other things as well.
I think if it naturally falls as as an obvious opportunity to do it, it makes sense. But if you're taking out a good player for him, that's the thing I don't get. And just another player, Lascelles. Botman looks like he's going to be out for quite a while now. Lascelles has been doing really well, 6.6 million. Jason Manners has had him. Says ticking over lovely. Looks a good option. 6.6 million, same price as Nakamba. So we talked about Palmer. Lascelles is another one, and it looks like Dan Burn is going to be out now for a couple of months as well. His direct replacement, Matt Targett, is also going to be out for months as well. So there's a really long period now where someone is going to get a real opportunity. Livramento came on at, I think it was roughly half time on it for Dan Burn.
Yeah, he did really well.
He played really well last week in the against United as well, didn't he? In the Carabao Cup, he's an excellent player. I just had a quick look, on Twitter just to see what people are saying. They reckon could either be Livramento, potentially Trippier goes to left back, Livramento goes to right back. Could be Lewis Hall maybe, but I did look at Livramento's price. He's 8.3 million, which is ridiculous when you can get Lascelles for 6.6, and Hall is not actually a defender in Sky either, so it doesn't look like there's going to be any direct opportunity for the Burn injury. But Lascelles, as I say, still looks good at 6.6. But with Botman and Burn out, does that make the Newcastle defence a bit less thing than it was before.
They've got trickier fixtures coming up as well.
They have.
I wouldn't be surprised if Bournemouth scored against them. I think Newcastle will win at the weekend, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bournemouth scored against them.
And a quick look, Newcastle's fixtures: Bournemouth away, Chelsea home, United home, Everton away, Tottenham away, Fulham, then Luton, then Forest. They're long-term fixtures.
Maybe it's not that bad.
No, they're actually quite decent actually. And then they away to Liverpool just for overhaul line. But yeah, there's only 9 fixtures, which is a really nice segue actually. Onto our slide called "The Overhaul is in Sight." So on FF Stuff, where we grab this from, either that or Ian Parrin's fixture sheet, we can now see the overhaul. And looking at the teams in the fixture counts now, Man City and Brentford have only got 8 games to play now until the overhaul, unless their fixture is rearranged, which it's mooted. It might be rearranged for roughly game week. It would be Sky game week 23, maybe just after that one in January. Most of the other teams have got 9. Chelsea and Spurs do have 10 each still, obviously including that extra game this evening. Just an interesting observation on Spurs. I was having a bit of a play around earlier, and Tottenham now do have a very spurious 7 for 5 now over lots of teams, because they're playing last this week and they're playing first in game week 19 on the Friday evening, on Friday the 15th of December. So they do have a 7 for 5 over lots of teams. If you are considering bringing in Spurs players, or then just that's just a note there. Paul, your thoughts?
Yeah. On Spurs, I guess it's interesting because the key player that a lot of people might be missing is Son. I think he'll be far out the most captained player, probably followed by Romero over Maddison. But he comes at a premium price, or close to premium price, at 9.7. And therefore, how do you get there without taking out someone who has got a really good fixture run as well? So Salah plays Brentford next week. I think that he'll be the most captained player on Sunday. Even if Haaland was fit, I still think Salah's probably going to be more captained than him amongst those that own both. I could be wrong on that, but that would be my assumption. And then if you look at that, like Saka's the other one that I think people will be considering moving for Son if they don't have him. Burnley at home, Wolves at home. It's the next 2, and then they play Luton. I just can't see me wanting, even though he doesn't look particularly fit. I think he plays in all of those games, probably. I can understand like a move to Romero or Van de Ven, knowing at their price that you'd be taking out someone that you perhaps don't want, like a mid-price midfielder or such like. But it's difficult call on Son, because I feel like if you were making the Son move, you had already committed to that based on previous moves, because there was like other opportunities to kind of restructure your team with that Spurs 2-0 game and on the Monday night and Friday night, and that felt like the right time to do a mini restructure with daisy chain moves to get things in. And if you get to this point now, and yes, the information could be, I've seen Saka play and he's not got his attacking threat, but you will be gambling against a relatively high ownership. I personally wouldn't deconstruct my team to get Son in, but if I didn't have Romero at a kinder price point and in a position that's, I think there's more consistency in points coming from him as well, and there'd be more avenues on how to get to him, then I'd consider more making that move than I would to get Son in.
I completely agree, and Romero's passing stats are insane. He broke the record last week, didn't he? 100 or the week before, 140 odd passes, wherever it was. So he's basically starting on 4 or 5 points every week, depending on how much they concede. Only had 1 book in this season, I think, as well. So I think Romero is a great show. Looking ahead as well for the fixtures for Spurs, home Chelsea tonight, okay, but Chelsea have performed pretty well defensively this season. So I don't think it's a stick on that Son hauls at all. Away to Wolves, it's not going to be easy. And then they have Villa, Man City, West Ham, and Newcastle. So I'm a big advocate of Son doing well against big teams, as in he tends to get a goal, but I can't see him really banging it, in kind of any of those games. So I think I kind of agree with you. I think you've made your bed now. I think if you really wanted Son, you'd have him now in your team. If you haven't, I definitely wouldn't be, as you say, taking out Saka or people like that. I think Romero can do a good captaincy job this evening. Maddison, if you've got Maddison, whoever it is, but yeah, I wouldn't be ripping a team up just for one or two games. And and if you get to Friday the 15th of December and you're absolutely desperate to have him in away to Forest, I mean, just deal with that then. I would personally. So, and there'll be moves done before then for Chelsea players, so you can probably release funds somewhere along the line. Someone Bowen to Palmer, or whoever to Sanchez, or whoever to Silva or Colwill to do that anyway, can't you? So that makes more sense.
Yep.
Any more observations, Paul, as we kind of head into I wouldn't say the final straight. There's kind of a long way to go. There's there's lots of games in December in quite a condensed period before we hit the overhaul. I suppose the only thing I would add is in terms of transfers, we reach a saturation point almost, don't we? Where not a saturation point, but we reach a breaking point where almost every transfer we make now should probably made, for me, with like the overhaul in mind. Or almost
you've got less game week. We often make transfers thinking of the long term and how it averages out over the long term rather than just a game in isolation. And you've got less of a period of time of which to make those points back to the overhaul than you've got in this situation. So yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And we talked about it last week a bit, but kind of looking, okay, there's the Wolves and Fulham single game day. We talked about the potential Chelsea hop on point, which would be an up until overhaul move. Can't really see a lot of other moves where it would be of massive benefit unless there's injuries, right? Unless you've suddenly ruled out for a few weeks or kind of wherever it is, and it's also that hop on point maybe for where Man City have that break in between the 16th of December and the 27th of December, where some teams have like a 3-for-0, which could effectively be 4 or 5-for-0s with captaincy and stuff, but doesn't seem really thing to force it until then, does it? Assuming players are fit and starting and stuff. So yeah, we're almost looking to wind down to overhaul now almost. Interesting stuff. Looking ahead to next game week, 2 game days: Wolves and Spurs at 12:30 on the Saturday. United home to Luton, Palace home to Everton, Arsenal home to Burnley, Bournemouth away to Newcastle. Interesting for
this is a good
captaincy.
One. Yeah, that's a good one. Nice split here. Son, Romero, Saka, Saliba. Be a nice split. Actually, I hadn't looked ahead until just before coming on air and had a look at the fixtures and thought, actually, usually the decision's very, very clean cut for me, and I haven't thought about it. I think could captain Saka, because a lot of people will have come off. His ownership isn't as high as what it once was. I'll maybe gauge on Arsenal's midweek Champions League game before deciding upon that, but at present, I would be going for Saka, I think.
Same, I think. I think Saka's the kind of most obvious shout. But, form and fitness hasn't been great in either recently. But he's just the kind of player you need to bang in 2 goals and assist when you go for a Saliba or something like that. I think I would, in these kind of fixtures, if it was someone like Chelsea, maybe tempted to go more for defender. Maybe I know I'm going for Son tonight over Romero, but that's because Son's playing at number 9, whereas obviously Saka doesn't. But against Burnley, you have to go for the attacker, don't you? You have to go for the major upside
Wolves have looked good at Wolves this season as well,
great.
in particular as well. So,
yep. Yes, sorry. And just on Saturday, United home to Luton. It's just targeting that fixture at the moment, and it might just say that did play well yesterday, but obviously no real interest in bringing in Man United assets. If you're still holding on to Onana, you've got to hope for something there. Something there, I suppose. Sunday the 12th, 4 games at 2 o'clock. West Ham, Forest, Liverpool, Brentford, Brighton, Sheffield United, Villa, Fulham, and then Chelsea and Man City at 4:30. You mentioned Salah earlier, potentially the best captain for the day.
Aaron Hickey's injured now. He's out till New Year for Brentford, so they've got quite a few issues in defence. Maybe not in central defence, but in the fullback positions as well. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to captain Salah as long as he's in the starting lineup, which we'll get to see. 2 o'clock kickoff.
Yeah, other options, maybe Ollie Watkins, Haaland. But
I think Watkins is double blank now. I'll put anybody that was considering going there off it now. I would have thought Bowen against Nottingham Forest. Forest get talked about being a decent team only at home, but they've had some good away performances this season as well. They've beaten Chelsea 1-0 there as well. So whilst he's definitely a good option, I don't know that he's a better option. Brighton seem to be a bit blunt in putting the ball away. So yeah, I wouldn't talk anyone out of going Haaland just based on what he can do on any given day. But I think it'll be Salah for me. It's nice and easy in my mind anyway.
Yeah, I think so. I like not having to make decisions 50-50s. They're the worst. They just keep me up at night. They keep me all week on my toes, just thinking, I'll think about tomorrow. I'll think about tomorrow. Yeah, I agree with you there. Hopefully we've answered the vast majority of the questions. When we talked about Simicast and Nakamba and Palmer and everyone else, we also discussed Saka or Salah for captaincy. So we had that question, and just the other one was the potential for moving Saka on for Rodri, but I'm not really a fan of that. Personally, like you mentioned Arsenal's run earlier, Burnley, Brentford, Wolves, Luton. Okay, after that it gets a bit tougher. Away to Villa, home to Brighton is not a tough attacking thing now either. But
I think the suggestion was to perhaps do that in game week 18, where Arsenal play Bournemouth. No, they don't. They play Villa, or the week before. Sorry. Yeah. Where they play Luton and then City. You could do that either week because City play on the Sunday and Arsenal play on the Saturday. Just think about it closer to the time, I think, rather than having to worry too much about it now. It's a downgrade, so you don't need extra money anywhere.
City have got a 3-for-1 over Arsenal then, but Arsenal go straight back on a 3-for-1 back. I can't see that. I can understand it, but
it's more time to assess that. Thought of as Saka underperforming or anything, or does he look unfit or anything like that as well? So
yeah, not for me that one. But that is it for us for this week, and this side of the third and final international break of the season so far. As usual, thank you all so much for watching and listening. Your continued support is much appreciated. Thank you so much, Paul. Where can people find you?
On Twitter, is it Twitter now? I see on Twitter, on X.
On XXX.
At Paul McAnulty 1, it's MCANULTY.
Just before we came online, Paul described himself as olive skinned.
You also suggested you had a tan.
I have got a tan.
Well, look like
I've golfed all summer, and I went to Marbella about a month ago.
Attack of the Killer Tomatoes.
I have got a tan. I've got a good tan, but you are definitely not olive. You are. It's a
lighting in this room.
Whatever the opposite of olive skinned is, that's what you are. So can we just have a quick vote in the chat if you think that Paul is olive skinned? If anything, he's jaundice. My handle on
a Simpsons character.
My handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergi. Please drop me a follow and Paul, and also at FFH_Sky. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave some comments. We'll be back in 2 weeks previewing Sky Game Week 16. We wish you the very best of luck for tonight and for Game Week 14. Have a nice, relaxed international break, all in readiness for the festive period and overhaul chaos. Goodbye for now.